Welcome, Amrish. Welcome, Roberta. Welcome, Tamu. It's really good to be here with you, and we're about to go into a really interesting conversation about materials. We've gotten some into our built environment. We have a sense of what biophilic design is. Now we get to discuss how we build a biophilic world, right? And so I'll introduce you a little to the panelists. So this is the boring part. I just read the bios, and then we'll get into the interesting part right now, right after this. So Amrish Shah is the founder and principal of Urban Green Consultants, UGC. It's a Kenyan-owned and operated sustainability consultancy that specializes in green or high-performance buildings. Amrish, a Kenyan environmental and green building professional with extensive international and local education and experience, founded UGC in September 2015. Stop me if there's anything wrong. Amrish has worked on a number of major green projects in Nairobi, including the city's first LEED certified building. UGC is now working in approximately 25 green construction projects in 7 African nations, including commercial offices, residential, healthcare, hotel, light industries, and warehousing. Amrish Shah is the founder and managing director of UGC, which I think we already said. Amrish has a Master's of Environmental Management with a focus on sustainable development from the University of Queensland, Australia, and a Bachelor of Business Management from Monash University in Melbourne, Australia. He's a lead Green Associate, Green Star AP, Edge Expert, Edge Auditor, Edge Trainer, and Well AP. Amrish also serves on the Kenya Green Building Society's Board of Directors, KGBS. Karibu sana. And then we'll go to Seki. Hi, Seki. Can you hear me?
Hi, Kai.
It's good
I can hear you.
It's good to see you-ish again.
Yeah, it's good to see you again.
Okay.
Sure.
So I'll tell them a little bit about you. He is the CEO of Megcom EcoBuild International, a rammed earth construction. He's also a rammed earth construction expert with a passion for sustainable building techniques and eco-conscious innovation. Sekitoleko brings a wealth of practical expertise to Biophilic Africa 2025. His work with earth-based architecture is reshaping what it means to build in harmony with nature. Let's welcome Seki.
Thank you.
Then a little bit about Roberta, co-founder Regenerative Systems Architect. As co-founder of Void Studios and a regenerative systems architect, Roberta brings visionary insights into circular design, sustainable architecture, and ecological restoration. There's some cool words there. We'll get some into it. Welcome. Then Tamu Kililo, who is the co-founder and CEO of Mycotile. Mike Kililo is a co-founder and CEO of Mycotile that offers advanced building materials, locally manufactured using readily available agricultural waste and rapidly growing mushroom mycelium as a bonding agent. He's an alumnus of the African Design Center in Kigali, a fellowship program by Mass Design Group, and currently doubles as a consulting architect and researcher at Cave Bureau in Nairobi. Welcome. So now that I've read something little about you, let's hear about the work that you do from your own mouth, and give us a bit of the origin story of the work that you do, how you ended up doing this work, and a little about what it means to be doing this work at this time in the world. Okay, we'll start with Seki.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I hope you hear me well.
Yes.
Just like you introduced me, my name is John Sekitoleko from Uganda, civil and environmental engineer. We here at Megcom that you mentioned about, we are into mainly 2 initiatives, that is rammed earth construction and smart cooking, because we're having issues when it comes to cooking here in Africa. Not only here in Uganda, but across. So we are into those two initiatives. Ram the Earth, since we are talking about biophilia, then that brings some good topics within the space. So that is specifically what we do here in Uganda. But to dig deeper, why we are doing this is because of how we grow up. How we grow up nurtures us to become innovative when we become older. So basing on my background, basing on where I come from, seeing mothers and women, suffering when it comes to cooking, when it comes to fetching firewood and missing out school, missing out so many things, we ended up looking at ways how we can do smart cooking, and we start phasing out on the usage of charcoal and wood so that we can save more souls from that space. Then with the rammed earth construction, it's really important for us now to go back to our roots. We grew up in spaces where our parents or our ancestors built with the earth, with mud, with rattle, with stones. Just like I was listening into the first panel, and they were diving so much into this. So you find that it's our generation that can also change this to go back to the ancestral way. We've had a decade whereby our politicians or our people who have been living, they have done so much to change the narrative of us living or loving our nature by introducing in so many things, introducing in the so much cement that we use, living in the jungles of concrete. And this is one of the things that really put us down and reducing the lifespan of ours. So thank you very much, and that's my brief.
Thank you, Seki. And one of the things that I've heard in what you said is, we've had this adage, necessity is the mother of invention. And I like to say necessity is the mother of remembering, because a lot of what we call invention now is, it's technology, methods, ways that we have known for a long, long time, but we've shifted from that. In the name of progress. And I think the way it works sometimes is you have to shoot forward first to remember, I kind of already had the solution already. It just needed to look a little different. So thank you, Seki, for that. And I'm curious to hear what you have to say about that and more. Amrish?
Yeah, thank you, and good morning, everyone. Is that working? Yeah. So my name is Amrish Shah, as introduced, and Urban Green Consultants. It's been a long journey. You asked about the origin story. I moved back to Kenya about 13 years ago now to start this. A long, long journey. A lot of resistance in the market, trying to get buy-in from developers, from the real estate market, on this green concept, which was seen as a foreign nice to have, but, in Africa, have bigger problems. It's about cost, it's about money, so, a lot of sleepless nights trying to see if this would work out. 5-6 years ago, I almost threw in the towel and said, I better get another job. This is not going to work out. Spent a lot of years with KGBS. I'm no longer with KGBS. I spent about 8 years on the board, but I understand the pain, putting on conferences, bootstrapping, took a loan, all these kind of things, which is, it was a lot of graft. But we're so excited now to see this real movement start happening. In the last few years, the movement's really picked up. We've grown from just a handful of projects to now it's 100+ projects, mostly in Kenya, but also 14 other African countries now. And we're really excited to see this sort of movement beyond just energy and water efficiency. Materials is becoming a really big one. We're looking at how to build with alternative materials, mass timber, rammed earth. I'm so curious about the mycelium story as well, so super excited to hear about that. And just what you're talking about, going back to the older ways. We're looking at all the buildings that were built in the 50s and 60s in Kenya, looking at CBD in Kisumu, Eldoret. These buildings were so well designed to capitalize on the natural climate. AC didn't exist then, so they have good they have shading devices, they're positioned well, they have the airflow. So when we go and audit these buildings, we're like, hey, you actually have a very sustainable building. Let's just focus on some efficiency measures on your lighting, water. Suddenly you have a very, very high performing building. So now showing these, how this is, also, going back to older ways of thinking. So we definitely lost sight of that with these big glass facade buildings that have come up and these modern style designs. So Yeah, a lot to talk about. I'll leave it at that. Maybe just on the certification side, that's extremely important because it actually, if you can't measure and quantify it, how do you know how green it is? It's nice to talk about the green features of your building, but without an actual tool to measure it, and none of these tools are perfect. They all have their flaws. I think Joanne talked about it as well. EDGE is probably the closest. It actually looks at the local context. It has local data, local climate data. Materials-wise, we're actually, we're able to communicate with them different materials, give the life cycle analysis, give the embodied carbon impact of those materials, and they take it on board and they use it. We're doing projects in Zanzibar right now. They don't have that data, but we can get that data. We give it to them. They update. Same with if it's mycelium or something. We can do that. We can do the analysis. So we need a lot more product testing and all of that kind of things. But we're happy to see this moving ahead. And I see some photos up here, which I put, but I'll discuss that later. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And listening to you, a question that I have is, and you've gone a little into that, just when we talk about green building and introducing green building into a space that is not that far flung from our old ways, so how we tell that story, not just in our words, but in the way we continue to design, as opposed to, I was just having this conversation outside with a friend about how we talk about the old ways, like we have to go so far back, like they're so far removed. And yet the story we're really talking about is one of evolution, as opposed to like now we have to stop progressing and go back and like go back to our ancestral ways. How do we evolve that? And listening to the work that you're doing, Mtamo, with mycelium, I know mushrooms for, you eat mushrooms, you use it as medicine. So I'm curious to hear what that process is for you. And again, some of the origin story.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. I thought she would go first, but it's okay. Okay. So I think the story, personally, I'm an architect, I'm a trained architect. I loved materials. I've always liked pushing materials to the limit to see what you can achieve. Most of the projects that I did research in campus were based on simple brick building and how far can I push that brick? How far can I really push that brick? Even somebody mentioned here about corrugated roofing sheets, for example. Yes, it might look in the face that it's not necessarily a good material, but with good design, it can still be a good material. There are very good projects in Australia. One good architect called Glenn Markert, who can design a very environmental conscious project using corrugated iron sheet. So it's really the designer pushing the material to the limit and being friendly to the environment. And I've always believed as an architect, if I'm not designing a project that is rooted in the context and is environmental friendly, what is the purpose of designing them? That should be the root core, and then I can look at other things about social aspect, the lifestyle of the people I'm designing for, and the community at large. But the story of mycelium, yes, again on research of material. Mycotile was formed as a research think tank into material based on fibers, natural fibers. And we've tried many natural fibers, coconut coir, rice husk, corn cobs, sugarcane bagasse, and a few others. And the main bonding agent has always been mushroom mycelium. For background story where this was founded, I was a fellow in Kigali with Mass Design Group, African Design Center. And it happens, for those people who love mushrooms, the biggest mushroom supplier in East Africa is based in Rwanda, is Kigali Farms. And I spent time with those guys, learned a few things about mushrooms here and there, and it was quite interesting, quite a simple process. Everyone, I think, can grow mushrooms here if they wanted to. So from there, I think I picked a few things here and there, and we were fellows from maybe about 10 countries, and the guys told me, hey, you are Kenyan. If you go back to Kenya and don't make this a business, you would have failed your country. So the challenge was set. I came to Kenya, I was like, okay, I need to push this research. That time, we thought we'd do suspended ceiling tiles. We were using corn cobs to bond with mushroom mycelium, oyster mushroom then. When I came to Kenya, I pitched to a few interested people. People were like, hey, I don't know which direction you're going, but there is no way we can see mushrooms being a building material, because everyone reads it as mushroom material. Something we've learned, of course, I can discuss a bit more later, how to market this product. So We were lucky then, we engaged the government through Research Institute Kirdi, and we've researched a few other mycelium, a few other mushrooms, if I can call that. And at the moment, we are using mostly Ganoderma to form insulation. Insulation is the easiest product for us to penetrate the market, because a few things about it being, for the architects in the house, it's insulation. I don't need to be accurate, like 600 by 600. It can be 603, 605, it's still fine. It's insulation, and I just need to get the density right, and it performs right. So that is the product that we have rolled out in the market. We have a few early adopters. Of course, we are not doing large volumes. We are doing just small volumes, small clients to introduce that to the market. But on the research side, we are doing building blocks, tiles, a few other packaging material still in the research. For the research says that maybe 2/3 of the world is mushroom mycelium. It's just below us, we don't know, and it's communicating to us. So maybe one time they may be taking over us, and we should be building with them.
Thank you, thank you. It definitely, excuse me, looking at the photos and seeing some of the work that you're doing, and just the different phases of it. Again, like I started by saying when I invited you to speak, what most of us know of mushrooms is we eat, and then there's a medicinal aspect of it. So to see that there's so much more that's possible with mushrooms, I'm excited to hear more about what's going on with that and some of the challenges you've come across, but also even more excited to see how this evolves as we move along. And so now we'll go to Roberta. Any interaction that I've had with Void Studios has been very, very interesting.
Thank you.
And regenerative systems architect. I think of regenerative systems as medicine, circular, and so I'm curious to hear where architecture and ecological restoration and regenerative systems, circular design, where all those intersect. Yeah.
Thank you, Kai. I think you really pointed out very well that it's all about circularity. And when we're talking about regenerative systems, we are talking about circularity. So what does that actually mean? So let's reflect a little bit on the life cycle. So we're starting with birth, life, death, and then we kind of stop there. So the question when we started Voice Studios was what happens after that? So maintaining this mortality awareness and applying it to our buildings has reinforced our research branch to connect with indigenous communities and really reflect on that notion of mortality. And are our buildings subjected to this life cycle? So we've come to the conclusion that it's all about rebirth, and it's all about the cycle of rebirth. And that really led us to a different question, and that is, what does it mean to be a good ancestor? And that, the answer in a very simplistic form is what do you want to leave behind? Connecting with indigenous communities particularly in South America, but also here with the Maasai community, has really reinforced that study into understanding what is our legacy and what kind of legacy we want to leave behind, and what kind of foundation do we want to build for the next generation to start building upon. And materials, talking about mycelium, talking about rammed earth or earthen buildings, have come to the forefront of this discussion. So we've been fortunate enough to be able to implement that theory and that philosophy in a careful consideration to materials in a couple of projects here in Kenya. And we can't talk about ecological preservation without cultural preservation, and we cannot talk about both of them without giving regards to the native communities who have been at the forefront of climate change for millennia and have shown incredible skill of adaptability and resilience. So why don't we reflect that in our buildings? Why can't our buildings reflect this level of resilience, this level of adaptability? So integrating indigenous knowledge and indigenous practices have been the blueprint for designing such buildings, and also to take our research brand further and really challenge the world of architecture and the construction world into paying attention back to ancient old practices of building with the earth. And what's really important is to point out that architecture really has the power, this transformative power, and really has the power of recreating a dialogue of reconciliation between our own ecological, with our own ecosystems, and part of that are cultural and ecological ecosystem working in symbiosis. So I think we'll dive more into this kind of holistic aspect, but suffice to say is that culture and ecology cannot function one without the other. And it really is down to recognizing our ancestors and the practices and the wisdom that they have left us with, and is really about creating that cultural identity, creating that cultural rebirth, and also paying respect to our ancestors.
Thank you, thank you. As a regenerative systems designer, I'm very interested in the circularity, in the cycles of life, and how they express in the work that we do and how we design. My area is not architecture. I'm more into women's health and food seed sovereignty. But to be able to see how it's the same thinking that guides even in architecture, it's very interesting. And one of the things I'm curious about, having had the experience that I've had, and each of you can speak to this just based on your own experience, and maybe even give us a particular scenario, a particular project you've worked on. But one of the challenges that I often come across is, first you say what you do and then you have to define it. And then you have to just say a lot about it before it's like, oh, that's what you do. And so just how it travels through the ecosystems that we're part of, there's different ways that we're approaching our built environment and materials. I'm really curious to hear what your experience has been in traveling that into the spaces that you occupy, on an individual level, in seeking funding with government and policies and all of that. I'm especially interested in that one because, I mean, if there's a stop, if there's a block there, there's not much you can do. You find ways to go about it. So I'm really curious about the projects that you've already done, and some of what you've learned, but especially in the way of how that travels through your spaces and actually arrives at materialization. So we'll go back to you, Seki, again, and tell us a little bit about your experience with that.
Oh, thank you. To be specific on this one, we have been working on a project, and the major issues that we face when working on such projects, especially projects that we think that they came from our ancestors, a bit hard, because our people, their mindset has been now changed and is stuck into the current era, or the present. So it is one of the issues that we face, but in order to tackle it is to have the masses become aware that in order to be able to beat the climate change, because biophilia is all about, sorting out the climate change global crisis. So to beat it and, win over it, we may not win over it as a generation, but if we go into it and we change the mindset of the people, that will be one of the things that we shall have done, and then it will keep us going. Then the other thing about the policies, yes, we have issues with the policies, but then having no policies cannot stop us from, going further. It cannot stop us from moving forward because the technologies came in. Rammed Earth is not, yes, we are having it from the past, but we want it to have it in the present. And the present has its preferences, So we have to do projects, or we're doing projects that really fit in. But how do they fit in? You have to look at now the usage of the project that you're looking at. We have the rammed earth that is raw. You could have a raw rammed earth house, and you could have a stabilized rammed earth house. But all this depends on what kind of project are you putting up, what kind of usage are you looking at. So once we have all this in place, and then we have the laboratories in place, we go into the laboratories, test the materials that we're having on ground, and find out what exact materials that are going to work for us. So we not wait for the policies. Yes, we have to influence the policies, and that is why we sit into conferences. I'm not someone who sits into conferences. I'm someone who implements projects. So because we do implement projects, that implies that, yes, even if we have to influence the policies, but we do not have to wait for the governments to have these policies in place. We have to push them. How do we push them? Start. Once you start, go to the laboratory, test what you have, and then present, because they will not give you the policies if we don't push them. So we have to keep going, and we have to keep building these resilient houses. We have to keep building the stoves that we have to build, so that we look at how we save our communities. We look at how we save the homelessness that we are having, because we are looking at introducing something that is affordable. And when we talk about from the earth, it's just about having the soils around, test them, and find that they are compatible with what you want to put up, and then make out the shutters or the formwork, and then ram. What is a bit hard is now having the pneumatic rammers, which we do not have here in Africa yet, but they come from out. But then, even without the pneumatic rammers, we introduce now the community in the projects, that we do, so that instead of the pneumatic rammer that we do not have as the East Africans, or in Uganda, or in Kenya, then we have the community, we have the manpower. Let us do the manual ramming or the manual compaction, so that we have these projects going forward. Not merely to wait for policies to be put in place, but to force those policies to be put in place. Because once we force them, then they will be put in place, and then we shall have the ancient coming back to reality, but in a better way that fits in the present, and also looking at the future where we are heading.
Thank you, Seki.
Can I just jump on that? I think John really pointed out a very clear message and a very strong message, which is about ancient traditions finding new expressions. And this is where I would really like us to spend a moment and really break the stigma of this sort of materials. When we're talking about rammed earth, John and I, we're working on the project that we've been seeing on the screen. We're working together. He's our rammed earth expert. And what we have seen with rammed earth is, first of all, we approached the project with a lot of doubts, with a lot of uncertainty, and we have done a lot of research into it. When John was talking about testing, we have built some mock walls with various different mixtures and testing them. And actually, it was quite astonishing what came out. The results that came out is that you are actually building stone. So you are learning from the cycles of nature, where you have millennia-old sediment, stratas forming, and you're doing that with manpower. I mean, talking about encouraging and supporting communities to take ownership over their livelihoods and to build with ancient world technologies, and bringing that labor and skill back into our focus. You know, when we were talking about mycelium as well, mycelium is a fantastic new emerging material that we have seen in various different forums that is becoming more and more popular. But to be honest with you, these are materials that are coming from the ground. They're coming from their own within their own ecosystems, and this is exactly what it is with natural materials. Is that it's a celebration of the ecosystem that they're emerging from. And why does it stop there? Why can't our building continue that legacy? So utilizing these natural materials really is a way of amplifying what is already there, and it's just not amplifying, honoring, and bringing that skill back into the 21st century and empowering communities.
Thank you. As you both are speaking, I'm thinking about, what John has said about it has to start, if we're thinking of policy change, the only real time I've seen policy change work truly is when it starts on the ground. A lot of the times when you try to implement it from top down, it can be quite abstract when we come at it that way. It's theory and we think this will work and maybe this will work, but let's do it and then let's see if it works. But when it's starting from the ground up, we've seen that this works. This definitely works. Okay, so now let's building
the confidence.
Exactly. And so I'd like to hear some more about what that has looked like with certification and that entire process, Amrish.
Yep. So, I think really one of the only ways you're going to move this along, well, there's two ways. First is we need to start communicating this or framing this as a business advantage and not just a cost. Right? As much as developers and stuff care about the environment and they'll come in and say, we want to do the right thing, until they see it in their pocket, they're not going to move. Our messaging as a company has never been save the planet messaging, even though that's what drives us all, I think. It's about cost. The developer wants to see, they want to see the numbers. You're more energy efficient, it's lower energy operating cost. Improved indoor environmental quality, it's improved retention. Users are going to be more comfortable, more happy, they're going to spend more time. We've had the statistics about users in office. Workers are more, 15% more productive. In schools, children score higher in test results. Hospitals, people spend less time, etc. So there's a lot of good data out there. A lot of it is more sort of qualitative data, but the data is there and we're starting to see that more. That's the only way. We have to move from this sort of idealism to strategy and everything from biophilic design materials, showing that rammed earth, and we're having discussion with you guys earlier that, showing that these rammed earth walls, it's not just, great to have a local material and stuff, but thermal comfort. These are very good for keeping thermal comfort in extreme temperatures. What a wonderful material to work with, and that's going to reduce your cooling costs of your building. You're not going to have to put AC. You're going to have a much cheaper building to run. It's more simple. So, these kind of things are so important, and we have to show the numbers. We have to show the return on investment, and that's when the developers are going to start saying yes. So, that's a big part of our work now. And the second one is policy, right? Through KGBS, we've been banging our heads against the door trying to get government to enact policy. Obviously, our new building codes are coming. They have a lot of green elements, which is great, but it's not quite clear how enforceable they are, what the optionality of it is, and it's a step in the right direction, but we need to see how they're going to enforce it and how that's going to come through. They could do so much stuff. Government needs to lead by example. They should demonstrate on government buildings, alternative building materials. Start building, even portions out of rammed earth, mass timber, mycelium. This is what can be done. Better product testing, building and training workforces in these alternative materials. Because we're doing a lot of projects now, and what's interesting about some of these certification tools is that they're getting harder and harder, right? The baseline keeps increasing, which is great, so they set the bar higher and higher. On edge certifications now, you cannot get a building passed just by doing your traditional concrete steel structures now. So we've had projects now have come to us, they can't pass edge. They're doing all this great stuff on energy and water, but they can't pass edge. The hand is being forced. We have to look at an alternative building material. Oh wow, we have to use less cement and steel. Great, now let's start thinking about what other materials exist. And the hand has been forced, and yeah, we've had some really cool experiences where they found another material or a different way of doing it, and it's actually saved them money. Now the developer's saying, hey, I saved money and I've saved CO2. And this. So, the good stories like this, and we need to communicate that more. This is why KGBS is such an important organization, just to showcase all these different types of projects, your projects, get everyone to become more and more aware and familiar. So education, training, communicating how this, these principles. Yeah.
I just wanted to pick up from where you've mentioned about, you've mentioned something now, I'm a believer in the bit-size solution. So yeah, we can be ideal. Most of the people in this room understand the ideal situation, like we know what to do, but what about the masses? How do you communicate this to the masses? How we can create an aspirational project that shows Ram the Earth is done well and how it is, but how can I build it myself back in my village? How can we get that to that level? And that comes even to just how we package the product. For us, for example, our insulation. Initially, of course, we were excited about the product. We are selling this. It's a green product. It's completely compostable. It's completely circular. And we sell to a few people here and there, they're excited. But when you go down there, people want to know, how long will this product last? How long does it last? Is it affordable? Is it accessible? And you realize you have to have almost two marketing guides for the same product. Like this is for, the table and the boardroom. I can tell them this, but here when I got, for those on the ground, I have to sell this product to these people, and they understand the real benefits. If it's for developers, like Amrish says, like, where do I benefit? What is the value? How does it compare to alternative in the market in terms of just price? And then in the long run, how does it perform? So I think something also that you've mentioned about the project, I've seen the project that were floating in the presentation. And I think those projects have so much influence in people just seeing like, okay, so I can actually use this material to come up with a project that is really, really aspirational. We built a school somewhere in northern Rwanda where they have a lot of volcanic stone and a lot of clay, local clay bricks and clay tiles. And they are considered, those materials are normally considered for the person who cannot afford architecture. So they are used, you do your own clay tiles, you do your own boundary wall with volcanic stone. But we did an aspirational project. It was, I think it was in a few other international papers. But then you realize people are like, okay, I can actually use clay tile and achieve a good project and it performs well. But then how do you still, even so, how do you still sell to these people that actually this product is affordable to you, is available, you'll build it at a lower cost, because those are the things that matter to them. It can be green, we know it's green, it's important to the environment. Us on the table here know that. But when we are selling to those people, we have to sell that bite-sized solution for them to understand, actually, this project is valuable to me. The same way it will be valuable to a developer in terms of numbers.
And just to add on to that, I mean, convincing the masses to go to building structures of where they came from, rammed earth or timber, guys don't want to do that. They want to see the concrete steel. Why should it be us on, maybe the affordable housing side that have to go through this? And which is why, again, government needs to lead by example, show other projects need to showcase. We're doing the world's, or Africa's largest mass timber building in Zanzibar now. And again, it can show the guys that, it can be done and you can live in it. It is, the walls are thick enough. They are thermally comfortable enough. It is safe. It is. So it's a huge education awareness thing that has to happen out there, which is.
I think what we've been discussing for the last few minutes here is about shifting the game, really. Instead of us waiting for the government to put all of these policies in place, it's all about taking that action and driving the conversation and driving the dialogue. And it's up to us. If you want to see the change, is that quote, be the change you want to see in the world. It starts with you, and then that was going to have a ripple effect. And then more and more, it's more about identifying your allies in maintaining this narrative and leading this narrative. For example, for us, as architects, we have our local team, we work with our local team, but we also work with building certifications to give that validation that what we have put out there, it is actually standing the performance that we've been trying to drive throughout the project. And you're leading the government or the policymakers into a position of saying, I have no excuse not to accept this. So it really is about shifting the game, and we do have all the solutions. This is the thing, we are in 21st century under a climate crisis, and the thing is we have all of the solutions, we just need to implement them. But how do we implement them is to understand that this is not a singular individual journey, it's about identifying who are your allies, and that's going to lead the conversation forward.
And I think, look at it from now an entrepreneur point of view, it's just the opportunity that is in the continent. You can't experiment a lot in, for example, in Scandinavia. The building restrictions there are so stringent that introducing a new product is actually quite hard. We have some partners, some Danish partners who are looking, they have the whole technology, but they cannot use that technology there. They can actually try it maybe in South America, Peru, and then they're trying another one in South Africa, and probably they will do in Kenya. So we have the opportunity here where we can actually influence policy. It's where here we can actually do the experiment. So from an entrepreneur point of view, there's really opportunity. And we all know like the building stock in the continent is not built yet. Yeah? The population is going to book. Okay, I know all these numbers World Bank has put there, 2.5 billion by the year 2050. All those people needs to be somewhere and housed. And we have an opportunity to do it right. Just to do it right, to do projects that I think from an entrepreneur point of view, for me, there is business there. I just need to sell the product right. And I have resources, I have agriculture waste. I have so many factories doing sugar, and the waste that they produce is ridiculous. You'll be surprised. I can't even touch, I'm not even touching, I don't know, 0.01% of the waste that they are doing at the moment. So there's opportunity, and we look at it as an opportunity, not as a challenge. It could, not as a problem, but really an opportunity for business.
I think that's really important that what you just highlighted there is that we tend to spend far too long focusing on the challenges and the problems and not celebrating actually the successes. And I think there's forums like this where we need to actually focus on the positive and focus on building relationships, focusing on creating synergies and celebrating successes together.
And just to add on your point, I agree with everything you're saying. I think just time is not on our side. And with what you're saying, we're going to double the population in the next 30 years, double the amount of building stock. The policy side has to come, especially in this region. In the UK and things, it's great. You have a lot of good regulation. It's all there. Buildings have to comply. There's no other way, right? Here, it's still voluntary. We can tackle, 5% of the buildings who want to go green. But, that's it. Without the policy side, we're just not going to, we're not going to do enough in enough time to get there. So, that's, I think, a big challenge to everybody in the room is how do we make that happen?
And so one of the things that I'm picking on as you're all speaking is there's still this idea of a lot of what we call alternative materials, alternative ways. Anytime I hear the word alternative, I'm like, now I'm listening. Because that's really where a lot of our solutions lie right now. But thinking about rammed earth, mycelium-based building is pretty new, I think, as opposed to like rammed earth, which has been around for a while. And super adobe building, for instance. Like there's so many versions that have been around, but that's what you see when you go to your grandma's house. The neighbor that cannot afford to build. It's a poor man's way of constructing. And so I can see how that becomes a challenge in the storytelling of, now you want me to use soil? But my neighbor next door who now has a Prado, who got that big tender and now has a Prado, is using concrete and steel, but you want me to use soil? So I can see how there's a challenge there with, yes, there's the policy and all of that, and it all has to come together. In an ecosystem, the critters and the bugs and the sun and the air and the rain, it all has to come together for an ecosystem to thrive. And I also see the challenge of, you want us to build the poor man's way?
Precisely, that is the stigma that I wanted to address when it comes down to these materials. The stigma of rammed earth, and I'm sure John might also have some thoughts on this, is that let's just go back to history. Just humor me, let me take you on a journey. What has happened? What is wrong with mud and sticks, and what is wrong with earthen buildings? Well, if we were to look at where did it all started, we're looking at the Industrial Revolution, where we shifted our attention to innovation, but we considered innovation as bigger, better, more grandiose, without any regard to culture, to where it's actually coming from. And we've seen this as architects through Bauhaus, where it's more about in the industrialization of design and simplification of design. That is fine. However, that narrative has driven the whole dialogue up to date. And here we are with the climate crisis. So do we continue this way, or do we take upon our ancestors' way of living in communion with nature? So how do we apply that and shift that paradigm in architecture and in buildings? What it's all about, as you pointed out, Kai, it's all about creating synergies, and going back to circularity, it's all about creating buildings that are literally the epicenter of life. And that epicenter of life stems from today up to tomorrow. And when I say tomorrow, I'm even there to look at 150, 200 years in the future. So going back to this cycle of life, birth, life, death, and rebirth, how do we take on that ancestral knowledge? Well, we're looking at the materials that we implement. And how do these materials decay? Because essentially everything decays. Who are we to think that our own mortality doesn't apply to everything that we design and put out there? That is futile to spend time and to consider that. What we are trying to do is we're trying to shift the attention and to think that how can a building become an epicenter of life? So we're looking at how do we harvest water? Where does that water go? What kind of system does that water support? How do we as humans thrive alongside nature? What can we take from nature to learn that we can apply in our buildings? And what materials do we use? And how do these materials decay in 150 years from now on? And what do they leave behind? So when we're thinking about what do they leave behind, we're working backwards from there to make informed decisions, to hold ourselves accountable. Holding ourselves accountable to what we put out there. So when we talk about concrete, when we talk about steel, these are invasive materials that we are injecting into millennia-old ecosystems. And once those ecosystems, and I'm talking about not just referring to plants, but I'm talking about the ecosystems that thrive inside of the marram soil. Those are millennia old. Once they disappear, because we put concrete, because we put invasive materials, once they disappear, we cannot replicate that. We cannot. No matter how almighty we think we are. So what do we leave behind? What happens with these buildings when they decay? So, for example, with the projects that we've been showing on the screen, that's exactly those are the questions at the forefront of every single design decision that we have made. So when these earthen walls, when we take in 150 years, when the buildings finish their human habitation, we take down any invasive materials. Well, I'm talking about glass, and I'm talking about any ironmongery. When we remove those, we leave the building to come back into the ground and become a pulse of nutrients for the ecosystem to thrive. It's all about coming back to the question. This is the question that I want everybody to leave with today, is what does it mean to be a good ancestor? What have our ancestors left us with, which is adaptability and resilience? And what do you want to leave behind? And let that sink in and let that drive all of your decisions. If it's in business, if it's in finance, if it's in architecture, if it's in urban planning, etc. We even applied all of these ancestral knowledge and practices as a business. So on a business level, it works. So there's no excuse not to listen to our ancestors.
Thank you. And I'm curious, I mean, Mtami, you said you've only touched like 0.01 of what's possible with mycelium. Just thinking about, again, mycelium, like everything's operating off of, where, and like the energy of mycelium, that's what's connecting everything, in the soil. We're just beginning to understand what's possible with mycelium. So tell us a little more. We need to wrap up in a few minutes, but just tell us a little more of how do you move from the 0.01 to 2, to 5, to 50%? What does that look like? Just paint a little picture for us as we close.
Yeah, so I think your question sounds like an investor question. How are you going to scale? How are you going to scale this business? So anyway, how we think about the way Mycotile as a business is set is a research center. So we are not looking at insulation is just the first product that we've rolled. It was the easiest roll in the market, but we are thinking about how can we make a building block? Can we compress different agriculture waste? Primarily now we use sugarcane bagasse because it is easily available. Its pH values are really good, and the mushroom mycelium has some crazy affinity to it. If I put in this room, I put sugarcane bagasse full, and I put mycelium on that one end. After maybe 1 week, I will have mycelium on the other opposite end. The fibers have gone through, so it's just that vicious. But yeah, so is thinking about how can we make this like an ecosystem? So getting out of building material, for example, can we do packaging? So replace all polystyrene, and you have this packaging for electronics. If you throw it, after you get your electronic, you throw it, it decomposes, goes back to the environment. So thinking about that, we've thought about other more interesting ideas, like maybe even introducing some seedlings to it. So if it decomposes, plants grow out of it. So just when in the process of making, we introduce some seeds in the panel. So when it decomposes, wherever it is decomposing, it grows into a different material. But yeah, so in the building industry in itself, there are several areas. We are using it more internally now. So the test is to try and go external, because then we can have more volume. And then in terms of scaling is, having satellite production centers, maybe a container production center, because the principle is that you just need space where you can grow it. So if you can have them just back to back, if you have a factory producing the waste, you have a production center for the panel. So we have one in Mombasa, one in Mumias, one in somewhere else around the world, or one in Peru, one in Brazil. Let's think global now. So you have very similar production process. You just need to do a few tests to understand the pH value of that substrate, what you need to do, and you have the production process. And then in the not just in the building industry, we create a lot more material, including decorative materials, pen holders, lampshades, and things like that. All planters like this, we can all do. Even coffins, by the way. There's an organization in the Netherlands that does coffins. People buy in advance, and you are buried in a mycelium coffin. So you're not taking nails or varnish or what into the landscape. You just decay and quite faster and go back to your rebirth. Go back to your rebirth, maybe into another plant.
Thank you. And I see how, the question you're posing of how do we become good ancestors? Talk about putting some seeds into the walls of your house. That's quite a cool way to approach that. And I'm curious to see if there's any future for Rammed Earth collaboration with mycelium. I'd be curious to see what that could look like. Hint, hint. And then see how that works within certification. So maybe just like put you 3 in a room, you 4 in a room, and just like leave, make sure you have enough food to figure it out, and water. But I'm really grateful for this conversation, and I assume there's a couple of questions. Okay, we'll take one question, and then if there's more questions, you're going to be around for a little bit, right? Yeah, let's find them, and let's have conversations with them. So we'll take one question.
Thank you. My name is Sheila Tanui. I'm a landscape architect. I have several, but since you've said ask one, I think for me, I'm curious to see how these sustainable materials fit into the informal settlements, given that historically informal settlements have a lot of they face a lot of disasters, such as flooding and whatnot. So how do these materials marry into that to improve resilience? And also, how do these materials perform in terms of costing, especially now when it comes to LCCA process? Thank you.
Is your question close to what she's asked? It's totally different. Okay, we'll take his question and then.
Thank you. My name is Brian Onen. I'm a green building and a sustainability expert. So my question is to Tam. Yeah, mycelium is one of the emerging construction materials for architects and designers to integrate in the design of buildings. Yeah, as an innovator, how have you influenced policy and regulations to push for the uptake of this on the Kenyan construction market?
Thank you. If those questions sound loaded. They sound like questions that will require a bit of time. If you can hint into, like, give a hint of an answer, and then please seek them out after this and have like full-on conversations with them, because I feel like the questions you're asking, and totally understandable. It's a loaded thing we're discussing here. So please seek them out after this and have those conversations with them. But if you can give hints of answers, and then we'll move on to the next thing.
Okay, so Sheila, in informal settlements, we've actually used mycelium a lot in insulating corrugated sheet housing to improve just the indoor air climate, if I can call it that. And it is completely, you can't vandalize it, because where are you taking agriculture waste made of mycelium? So it cannot be stolen. So it's actually very good for informality. And then in terms of policy, what we've done, so there was no actually policy for our board. So we had to create our own specification and then present them to Kenya Bureau of Standards. Like this, our material will perform like this during fire, for example. This is the U, this is the R value, and then present that for it now, for them to do their parallel test to see if what we are giving them works. So they only give you a base, like you need to get, for fiberboard, you need to be above the fiberboard. So if you can give us those specifications, then we will create a new standard for you. So yes, you can actually have a new product, create your own specification, and present it to KEBS with your numbers yourself.
On the same question, I'd like to take it perhaps to derail it a little bit to the affordability of this sort of materials to communities living in informal settlements. It's actually giving the power back to the community, because these are low-tech materials to create and to build. It's all a matter of introducing the skill or reintroducing the skill at the community level. So the affordability, it increases the affordability of such materials to be implemented, and it gives back the power to the community.
Yeah, I mean, just on the materials, the cost and durability, you know, it has to become cost competitive. You have to show it's going to be cost competitive, otherwise developers aren't going to use it. And I think, you know, local materials, rammed earth and things are, you know, they are demonstrating that, and you're using local site material. But we need better product testing. We need to demonstrate, we need to show that these materials actually work, that they are durable, that they are going to stand, you know, the same, elements and issues with wind and storms and flooding, heat gain, all of that. So, you know, we just need to show that. We need to have them independently verified. We need to have prototypes that people can go and see. And again, I keep saying government needs to do it, but obviously private sector as well, and you know, have these prototypes. But government needs to lead by example, and give prototype houses of mycelium, of rammed earth, of mass timber, where people can go and say, okay, this works, this looks good, I could live in this.
Thank you. And John, do you have something to add?
Yeah. What we are discussing here is solution-based. Actually, it's beyond business. It's creating solutions because we are looking at how do we love our nature. And when you look at from the earth, when you look at all the solutions that we are coming up with that really make us lovers of nature, then we have to go into it. Yes, it's business, but business will always come in after sorting out our nature. So when it comes to the costs, when it comes to, you know, the policies and all that kind of thing that we are discussing about, all rotates around and brings us back to how do we offer what do we offer to our mother nature so that it remains thriving, so that it remains loving us back? Because if we don't love it, if we don't create solutions, that makes us lovers of the nature, then we are not doing so much. So otherwise, the solution lies in material. The solution lies in us going back to what we have around, use what we have, and then, embrace it and live on.
Well, I want to say thank you so much to each one of you. And having sat here asking the questions and listening, what I hear is that there's great potential for materials, alternative materials, materials that have not been alternative for a very long time up until recently. But now they are considered alternative materials, building materials. There is great potential for them, for the evolution and the innovation happening there to guide the direction that we're moving in with our built environment. And I'm very excited to see how that evolves. And next year, let's see what this conversation looks like. Let's see what we're talking about. We've been able to gather all these people in the built environment into one room, props. But we've been able to gather this many people in this work into one room to have exactly these necessary conversations. So thank you for your contribution in this space and on the ground, asking the questions that will not stop being asked until we find the answers. And then once we find the answers, we ask better questions and we keep going until this is the norm, until we're not referring to them as alternative materials. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Wow.